Hello, you fantastic, lovely people. Welcome to the Deal Finders Corner, your weekly property talk show brought to you by Property Filter, hosted by everyone's favourite northerner, Asif Omar from the Property Filter team, who today is in Amsterdam. How lucky me. If you are going to pin Amsterdam tonight, then please do come and say hello. But we are the UK's highest rated platform for finding deals, and we're on a mission to empower our property investors and Deal Sourcer members to find 1,000 deals this year thanks to the Property Filter Blueprint. The purpose with your Deal Finders Corner is to give you more and the best of the available resources. Invite expert guests who will share with you the latest and most current strategies, tactics, secrets about what actually works right now in terms of finding and making deals, and the reality of systemizing and running a high-performance business in property. It is my pleasure today to introduce you to the rather wonderful Akash on today's Deal Finder Corner. Akash is a specialist in financial protection and estate planning and the founder of the Black Box after experiencing firsthand how lack of planning can leave families exposed. He now works with high net worth clients and landlords across the UK, transforming scattered documents and half-finished plans into bulletproof protection strategies. His mission is simple: to help clients build a fortress around their family and their wealth before it is too late. In today's episode, we are going to learn, number one, spot the hidden snakes that could unravel your portfolio even if you've got wills and insurance. Number two, discover the Black Box Blueprint, a proven framework to protect your family and wealth in just 4 weeks. Number three, real-life case studies of property investors who have avoided six-figure losses with the right planning in place, followed by an exclusive Q&A. So if you have any burning questions for Akash, then pop it in the chat and we'll get to it at the end. So, the usual, can we please give a massive, massive Property Filter welcome to Akash? Welcome, Akash. Would you like to share your slides?
Amazing, thank you. Right. Can you see my slides, everyone? Just give me a thumbs up. Brilliant, amazing.
Perfect.
Amazing. So thank you, Asif, and thank you, Property Filter, for having me. If for whatever reason you can't see, just feel free to jump in. So I'm going to kick off just by saying we are an FCA regulated company, so that's On Point Mortgages, and nothing that I'm going to say today is actually to be constituted as advice, because there are some things that I would definitely maybe not advise people do. So now let's get into it. It's kind of like my video. Everyone here has been playing the real life game of snakes and ladders. Property Filter helps you climb the ladders. By the way, Asif, do you like these property filters over the ladders over here? Quite an apt analogy, right? And that's what the real life game of snakes and ladders is. So you're trying to climb the ladders, but what if? What if you land on a snake? And what is a snake in this context? Could be anything, right? Snake could be illness, death, divorce, disputes, cancer. Don't forget about the snake. So I want to just ask a question. So how many people here, and it would be good to have a show of hands, so some audience participation would be highly appreciated. So how many people here have power of attorney? If you could just maybe put your hand up or just give me a nod. We've got one. Let me have a look. Yeah, we've got a few people. We've got some hands down. That's absolutely fine. That's not a problem. How many people know what a power of attorney is? Yeah, so we've got a few people. That's great. So power of attorney gives someone that you nominate the ability to make decisions on your behalf. If you're building this portfolio, but something happens to you, who is going to be the person that has the authority to deal with it? So it really comes in two guises: health and finance. So that's absolutely fine. So who here has a will in place? You've bought a portfolio, but who's it going to go to if you pass away? Again, show of hands, please. Yeah, amazing. So we've got a good amount of people who've got their hands up there. And finally, who here has life insurance? Unless we bought the portfolio with cash, if you did, great. If you bought it with debt, what is the plan for that debt should you pass away? Yeah, so we've got a few people again with their hands up, which is absolutely fine. So before I continue, it's always good to introduce yourself to people. So my name is Akash, award-winning property investor, creator of the Black Box and co-founder of On Point Mortgages. I, like you guys, invest heavily into my self-development, which for me has been a property entrepreneur. I've been going there for about 8 years. Guillaume has been my partner in crime there as well. And I absolutely love the community. So let me just share a bit about my journey with you guys. So if it's okay, I'm going to be a bit personal because I think, property is a personal journey. So growing up wasn't the easiest for me. Growing up, I failed English and maths, GCSE. I had my dad who came over as a lecturer from India in the 70s. So his highest values were education. And so by his standards, I was also falling short. So I really did struggle in my early years. It wasn't until a lot later that I found my flow through property and business. But being my dad, he said, do as I say, not as I do. And he said, you've got to get an economics degree. So I managed to get past school, went into, got a degree in economics, which wasn't the best, it wasn't the easiest, but there was a silver lining. I did go to Ibiza in 1999. So, everything has its silver linings. After that, I fell into retail and I worked in Sainsbury's or Safeway for people who are old enough, which is now Morrison's. And I worked in the HR department. I really enjoyed that. So I went and got a HR master's. But the thing that I enjoyed was actually the project management side and delivering projects. So I went and did project management for 10 years. After that, I had my first stint in property and we created a company called Intelligent Revenue Management. So Intelligent Revenue Management back in 2013, this was before Airbnb, we helped hotels maximize their revenue through rate management, which is going in and managing the rates according to events that are going up there. They were good at day-to-day management of the hotel, but not revenue. And we helped one hotel go from 1 to 1.2 million. So that was my first kind of stint in property. In 2015, we got an offer we couldn't refuse, so we ended up selling that company, and I continued as a project manager. In 2016, a good friend of my wife came knocking on our door, and he said, do you want to invest in the Leeds property market? Now, I'm Indian, as you probably could have told, and the thing that we do here is we make money and we invest in property. It was just the thing to do. So when he said, do you want to invest in property? I was like, hell yeah. So I'm a creator. Does anyone here know what Wealth Dynamics is? Yeah. Wealth Dynamics is a profiling tool, which I highly recommend. And I'm a creator. And my friend Shiv Haria was a tempo. So I don't do things by halves. I refinanced my property and I went out and invested into this company. So Lifestyle was a sourcing company that helped busy investors invest into the Leeds property market. To date, it's done about, I think it's 240 acquisitions, going strength by strength, absolutely killing it. At the same time, can anyone feel free to pitch in? When you're buying property, what do you need? Find the comment section here. What do you need if you're buying property? It's okay. It's the money. So I had a good friend of mine who was a mortgage broker. He was leaving work. And I said to him, well, look, I've started a property sourcing company. They're going to need finance. Why don't we start a mortgage company? So we did. Again, I had the money. I invested the money. And we started On Point Mortgages. And finally, I bought some property. And I'm going to just talk about my property journey right at the end once I close this off, because it's I think it's going to be quite interesting. In 2018, I left work because I was doing all of this while I was a full-time project manager. In 2019, I sold Lifestyle. So this is now Shiv owns this completely. And the reason I did this, and I don't know if there's people with all parts of the journey here. When I started into business, I did it because I wanted more money, more time, and more freedom. But the truth was, I didn't have any of them. And in 2015, my daughter Aria was born, but I wasn't spending the time with her. So I made a decision. I'm going to leave this business and focus on my family. And finally, in 2023, I created the Black Box, which I'm going to come on to. So a quick interlude to talk about my property journey. When I first purchased properties in Leeds, which were buy-to-lets, which I converted some of them to HMOs, I did it on LHA rate, Local Housing Authority. And that was the best rate you could get at the time. However, since then, I've had every problem imaginable. I've had people smoke weed in the property. I've had people die in the property. I've had people not pay rent for a year, absolutely destroy the property and have to almost go back to brick. what I did since 2020 is I slowly started moving my properties onto social housing. For me, it was asylum seeker. So again, this is not advice. This is just what happened in my story. And all of those unknowns started to become knowns. And that worked really, really well for me. And what I've been doing recently is, apart from focusing on the business, which is helping people protect, is I actually use Property Filter myself to look for blocks in leads. So I had single lets, which I then converted into either 5 or 6 bed HMOs. But now I'm taking that next level up and looking for blocks of 4 flats in leads, which I then just flip over onto social housing. So that's kind of how me and Property Filter interlink there. On Point Mortgages, my main company that I'm full-time in, started in 2016. Last year, we did 100 million in lending. We've got over 100 5-star reviews, although me and Google are battling it out for some reason because they've decided to take some of them down. And finally, we've had over 3,500 client transactions. So On Point Mortgages, very much embedded, team of 8, and just continues going from strength to strength. Now, why have I started the Black Box? So this is, again, is my personal story. In 2003, my dad unfortunately had not 1, but 2 strokes. And then a year later passed away from a heart attack. So that's already a difficult time for a family losing their father. But what made that time even worse was the first thing is he didn't have power of attorney. So when my dad had a stroke, the left-hand side of his body was paralyzed. If he lifted his left fist up, it would drop and he just had no control over it. So can people still see me as well? No, that's fine. So 2 things happened there. Firstly, we couldn't make decisions around his health. He was actually, perfect, thank you, Lee. Firstly, he was in a care home quite far away from us, but because we didn't have power of attorney, we couldn't request him come closer to us, which was a shame. The second thing is my dad was the breadwinner in the family, and my mum couldn't access the bank account. That was a major bummer for us. So we couldn't get the money when we needed it. The second thing is my dad didn't have a will. So again, many of us, we get busy, we've been meaning to get to this stuff. He didn't have a will. But what did it mean for us? It meant that the buy-to-lets that my dad had and our residential property, actually the cousins whom we grew up with contested the distribution of my assets and we had to go to court. Sounds like a Hollywood movie, right? But that's what happened. We had to fight our cousins in court without a will. Something that could be done very, very easily. And finally, he did have life insurance. So well done, Dad. You did have 1 out of 3. But like many people, you remortgage. He remortgaged the house to take out some money to invest back into the property to do it up. He never topped up the life insurance. And the upshot from that was my mum had to take on a £300,000 mortgage. So after seeing what happened with our family, our mission is to have a black box in every home and make sure property investors and people alike are covered and don't go through that same problem. So now that's kind of where I've come from. Now I want to give you guys some underlying context before we move into some of the main parts of the talk. So when I talk about wealth for the rest of this program, it really is about the holistic view on wealth. It's not just about money. It's about your health and, more importantly, your family. In Latin, wealth is actually a more holistic definition. So wealth is everything, including your family. And wealth really is, if you take anything away, this is the main part. Wealth is a game of 2 halves. The first half is you're growing your buy-to-let portfolio. You know, you're getting together with a partner, you're having children, you're creating that wealth in that first half. But what people often neglect is protecting that wealth, creating a castle around that wealth, creating a moat around that wealth. Should anything happen, you guys are protected. A lot of people miss that. And of course, I'm here to try and help you with that. So going back to those snakes and ladders, what if? While you're on your journey, what if one of these perilous things happen? Now, I want to ask you guys, in your house, where is your what if plan? So a what if plan is if something happens to you today, it's a plan that tells your family what to do, where everything is, and what to do in any eventuality. So where in this house is your what if plan? Don't worry, I'll wait. So not many people putting their hands up, but that's fine. However, there are what if plans that we have, right? So you've got a what if plan for your car. If you have an accident, you've got a what if plan. You've got a what if plan for your house. So why don't we have a what if plan for some of those big things that matter in life, such as what if I die? How will my family pay the bills? How will they continue day to day? What if my partner dies? What if I have a critical illness? Now, if your property portfolio income covers your expenses, you're probably one of the few. If you're not and you're on the way there, this becomes even more important because those snakes can take you out on the way up. And when I talk about what ifs, some of them I would actually argue are more than what ifs. They're whens, right? We know there's two things in life that are guaranteed: death and taxes, which makes them even more important. So I'm glad we've got that context out of the way. I'm now going to talk about the 10 most common misconceptions people make when it comes to property, when it comes to protection, rather. And if you've ever said, well, I've got life insurance or I've got a will, this section is for you. So the first one is, do I really need all of this? Which is a question that some people ask me. And the truth is, it's almost always fine until it's needed. And you discover the will says one thing, the insurance says another, and you find out the power of attorney hasn't been registered. So a question I'd ask you is, even if you've got some of it set up, when was the last time you checked it and made sure it was all coherent and following one systemized plan? The second is, I've sorted it already. I'm probably fine, right? So misunderstanding the depth of legal, tax, and emotional consequences when even one piece is missing can be absolutely, well, we've seen in our family, can really kind of put families out of whack. The second one is quite funny that I get from my clients, but they say, well, everything's in my email or in the drawer, they'll find it. But the truth is, when I do my client reviews and I speak to clients and I say, well, tell me about what you've got in place. And they say, well, I'm paying £30 a month direct debit for something. So I'm like, can you show it to me? They can't find it. And then my question back to them is, well, if you can't find it, how is your family going to find it when they need it? Another one, I did my will a few years ago, so I'm sorted. Reality is, marriage invalidates wills. New children, properties, or assets won't be included unless your will has been updated. Unfortunately, it is not set and forget. What about DIY wills? They help us save money, right? You can go to WH Smith's to get a will for £20, but the reality is, without joined up advice, this can cost family thousands. This is what actually, this slide I really like, because I feel sometimes property people that I speak to often feel that property is a shield, right? I've got property, I'm okay. If something happens to me, I've got property. But that is not the case. The property is not there for everything. And really, the property is there as a means. It helps you earn income to do what you want in life, not to be used as a safety shield. But even as a safety shield, we've got problems. And that problem is only 6% of UK life insurance policies are written into trust. That means 94% face probate and tax delays. Let's continue. Everything will just go to my partner and my kids, right? Again, a common misconception. That's not guaranteed, especially if unmarried or blended families. If you don't have guardians listed as in your will, your children can end up into care as soon as suitable guardians are identified. Power of attorney, I get a common misconception that people think it's not for now, it's for later. But the truth is, later might never come. One stroke, one accident, and your family will watch helplessly as your accounts freeze and strangers make decisions about your care. We were unable to make decisions when it came to my dad, who was incapacitated, so I know the importance of this firsthand. So for those who don't know what an executor is someone that you trust and you leave them and you nominate them to distribute your estate when you're gone. Well, the first thing they need to do is report into HMRC about how much tax they're going to get. It's literally what happens, by the way. If someone passes away, HMRC want to know, that's what probate is, how much tax they're going to get before your estate can be distributed to your next of kin. So an executor is someone you appoint to do that. So here we go. Well, the executor will know what to do. But the reality is, most executors don't even know that they've been chosen, and families have to wait 6 to 12 months for access. And this is the final one, and this is what I think is the most important one. It's just a few forms. I'll do it when I have time. Does anyone here think that what I'm saying is bad, or they disagree with it and they think fundamentally you don't need to do this. Not many people do. Normally it comes down to people are just busy, and this is a great representation. But the reality is you will never find the time. Life will always get in the way. And the question you want to ask yourself is, can you afford to take this risk? This should not be deprioritized. In truth, it's probably the most important thing you can do for your family today. And just kind of looping that back round into how it affected us and our family. So here's the cost for us not having this in place. We had to spend £2,000 getting access to my dad's bank account. We ended up settling out a court with our cousins for £50,000. That was the advice we were given. And my mum had to take on a £300,000 mortgage as a part-time school teacher, for whom English was a second language. And the final two things on that, the cost is not just monetary. The stress of that, that time was just so much to bear. And finally, at a time when I was supposed to be grieving my father, in our religion, we're supposed to grieve it for 7 days. I was actually fighting my cousins in court, and ultimately that's time I'm never gonna get back. So let's talk about the protection gap by the numbers. This is what the UK statistics look like for these big and important documents and your protection plan in general. So only 1 in 6 people have a valid will. 65% of people have no insurance. 80% have no power of attorney. Only 6% of life insurance policies are written into trust. And it's a bit outside the scope, but if it's not written into trust, all that money that comes from a life insurance policy falls into your estate, which immediately could be taxable from inheritance tax. So having that in place is really important. And finally, 73% of families struggle to access documents when someone dies. Imagine what you're leaving behind. You're literally leaving a maze behind for people if you don't have this in place. And there's really 3 levels of getting this sorted for your family. The first is where you're out in the cold. You're open to the elements. If something happens, you could be affected, your family could be affected. The second, I think, is even worse. We call it a false sense of security. And what that means is you've got maybe one part of the puzzle. You've got maybe, say, life insurance just for the property. Maybe no will, no power of attorney. But what it does, it lures you into a false sense of security that you're protected. The problem without joined up thinking is when something happens and you need it most, that glass house that you've built will come crashing down past your ears. The final thing, what I want people to get to, is a castle that surrounds you with a GPS. That means you guys are fully protected. And that's what we try to help with, is protection that matters in real life. You've got one navigation system that speaks to everything else, that speaks to your will, that speaks to your life insurance, that speaks to your power of attorney. That's the most thing. And a bit later, I'm going to share with you 5 tips on how you guys can start putting some of this in place. And what you want to move away from is just having a stack of paperwork. If you've got any of that already, again, most people don't, to having one system where everything is followed by a GPS, and that talks to everything. Everything's coherent, and you know it's going to work when you need it most. And that's where the black box comes into place. And we've helped many, many people, mostly property investors, with this. And the black box is all about moving you from those 3 levels of protection. At the bottom, you're vulnerable. Level 2, at this point, I had a bulletproof jacket, like 50 cents for anyone who knew him. I used to wear a bulletproof jacket on stage, but we want you to be level 3, black box level protected. And the black box centers around the 4 pillars of protection, which I'll go through fairly quickly. And it's protecting your family home. How many people here have children, please? If I could get a hands up. Yeah. Okay, great. So the first one is protecting your family home. If you're no longer around, that family home doesn't get taken back by the bank. The second is your children are protected. The third is your assets get distributed how you want, not a Hollywood drama where the reading is done and everyone's seeing to what they get. And finally, this concept we called emotional peace, which I'll come on to. I'll answer all questions at the end if that's okay, so I can see some notes coming in. And Asif will stop me if something's not working. So, has anyone heard of Maslow hierarchy of needs? Yeah, perfect. It's all about the bottom upwards. And that's what the 4 pillars of protection in terms of the protection pyramid is. And it's like going onto a plane. You know, they say put your gas mask on before you put it on your kids. So we've got life before death and life after death. So take these principles away with you. And let's reframe what I've got here as your what if plan. So if you take anything away, again, it's that what if plan. So personal protection. So I'm going to change it from the product to the question, what if I get injured? How am I going to pay my bills? Now, again, if you've got a situation where your property income covers your bills, fantastic. That's what we're all trying to get to. If you haven't, you need to answer that question. The second, what if I get a heart attack, get cancer? Unfortunately, the statistics are 1 in 2 people. What if I need care? What will I do about income? What if I need to adjust my home because I can't walk up the stairs anymore? Again, what is your plan for that? What is your plan for getting healthcare when you need? There's actually currently 7.35 million people on the NHS waiting list. When you need something, you need a plan to make sure you get the expert help when you need it. The second is a family home. You know, I say this is very, very straightforward. If you've got a debt on your house, you should cover it with life insurance. Don't risk it, right? It's very affordable. And what that does, it covers the debt. If you pass away, your partner gets the money, they pay off the debt, they've got a roof over their heads. It sounds so simple, but the amount of people who don't have that in place still astounds me. The second is what I call the golden goose. And this is really for you guys. Can anyone tell me what that is on screen? I'm going to check my notes to see the chat to see if anyone's saying anything. What is that? Yeah, it is the golden goose. And everyone as a property has a unique opportunity to create a golden goose. And what I mean in this context is you've got a debt on your portfolio. If you cover it with life insurance, if you pass away, they get the money, they clear the debt of the portfolio. They've got a portfolio that can come down generation after generation after generation if you structure it right. But you've got real opportunity. And that's what I help the majority of my clients in terms of the time I spend with them. Finally, at the bottom, you've got not enough money. At the top, you've got too much money. And with recent changes on inheritance tax, pulling in pensions, which was absolute travesty, you need to start thinking about what is going to happen with your portfolio. And for those who've got people, children rather than people, they are little people. Which one is your favorite child if you've got multiple? And yeah, Asif, you're definitely the favorite child. And the reason I say that, it's a loaded question, because this guy, which is ChatGPT's depiction of HMRC sucking up your money, is going to be your favorite child. And he's the person where most of your portfolio will go to if you have not planned it correctly. And again, one of the things that we do support our clients with is a basic assets and liability spreadsheet that will help you calculate your inheritance tax. And there's many, many ways we can help reduce this. One thing just to point out at this time, while we are talking about insurance, is Relevant Life. Relevant Life is a policy paid by the business. Who here, can I have a show of hand, likes tax effective solutions? Should be everyone, unless you like paying tax. Relevant Life is a very tax effective solution. The business pays for the premiums into a Relevant Life plan. When you pass away, it goes into a trust, which sits outside of your estate. And here's one, again, not advice. Rather than take the money by your partners, you borrow the money against a trust. Does anyone know who the Duke of Westminster is? Well, was. He's passed away. He's got a son now. You know, I think a £1 billion portfolio. He's got a very famous trust. He never owned anything. The trust owned everything. He used to borrow money from the trust to live his lavish lifestyle. When he died, it all went back to the trust, and now his kid is living off that trust. So again, borrow the money from the trust. The second pillar of the 4 pillars of protection is children. Very simple. If you've got children, you need a will for the basic premise that you don't want them to go into care. You want to nominate someone who will be looking after your kids. I won't dwell on that. That was the reason that kicked our asses into gear when we hadn't had this quite a few years ago. The third one, it doesn't have to be a Hollywood or Bollywood drama. There is no big reveal. You know, in Hollywood movies, when someone passes away, everyone's sitting around the table at the will reading. That's not the case, right? Generally, it goes to your children or it goes to someone, but you need to put it in the will to make sure your assets are distributed as you want. Otherwise, you'll face similar situations to us. And yes, Noman, it is a cash flow, exactly. Right. And this one is very close to my heart. It's financial maze. My mum, generally, in a household, you have one person who deals with the money and the other person deals with other things, right? It doesn't make sense for two people to do the same thing. My dad dealt with the money. Now, the problem with that was when he passed away, not only did my mom have to deal with everything that we've already talked about, she had to figure out all the practicalities that my dad was dealing with. And that was, that was probably one of the things that broke her the most. And just kind of bringing it to where we are now, that's why we created the black box. The black box is a physical black box that sits in your house. I'm a bit old school, especially with the amount of people who can't find their life insurance. And inside the black box, we've got everything you need for your partner to transition through that difficult time. And you've got your wills. I know AI is blocking it out. Power of attorney. Life insurances. The next step checklist, which is a checklist. Because do we get taught what to do when someone dies in school? Not some of that important stuff. No, never. But this would have been helpful for my mum when my dad passed away to make it a bit less stressful. The black book, which is that repository for all of your information, important information. And finally, we've got that one plan that rules them on, which is the what if plan. And that is all in the black box. So what we want at the end of this is your family home secure, your children's guardianship assured if you are no longer around. Intentional legacy, your assets go to who you want them to. It's not a given. And a simple fact that you can grieve when the worst happens, which we didn't. We were fighting our cousins in court. I was going to do worse, actually, but that's a story for another time. So look, what I would say to people is there are only so many tomorrows. It's not, everyone here is self-development oriented. So when we say it's not, when we don't have the time, we know it's not a priority, but please reframe that. The second, we know it can be confusing, but there are experts that you can speak to, like ourselves. And finally, we know there's a cost implication to get all of this stuff done. But as you've seen, there is almost a 10 times bigger difference in terms of what can be lost, especially when it came to our family. What you're trying to do here is create a life after death that your family could be thankful for, a legacy. Isn't that why we do what we do when we invest in property? We do it for our families and to leave a legacy. However, if you get this wrong, like my dad, you leave chaos, financial mess, families fighting each other. And that's what I want to avoid for you. And we're trying to help people get to level 3, fully black box level protected, where you've got this concept of peace of mind. So just a few case studies as I come into the second half of this. The first case study is our kids go to private school. We've worked hard to provide a life where we can send our kids to private school. One day, my wife was picking up our daughter from school, and one of the moms was crying. She was in a real state. We didn't bother her because of what happened, but we found out her husband was a property investor. He'd done a lot of JVs, but he passed away. He didn't have anything in place. The JV partner had taken the properties. There was no will, there was no life insurance, there's no power of attorney. And ultimately, she was fighting to try and get some of that back. And in the meantime, she had to take her kids out of school. So they'd lost their father, and now they're losing their friends from school. And it's all about thinking about you're working to create this quality of life for your family. But if you're no longer around without the right protection, that quality of life can very, very quickly go down. We've got John and Fiona here. They'd worked for 10 years to level up to their next home. They bought that home. They'd exchanged, which meant they were legally obliged to buy it. When they received the key, unfortunately, he had a heart attack and passed away. What was supposed to turn into a dream day turned into a nightmare. But that just goes to further highlight the importance of putting these protections in place, because anything can happen. So what we do here at the Black Box is we've got a 4-week Black Box blueprint that focuses on execution, right? We know people are busy, and that's why we've created a 4-week program. We get everyone together virtually, and we take you through it. And at the end of it, you walk out with everything: wills, power of attorney, life insurance, the Black Box, the what if plan, everything. You're done and dusted. Week 1, you build firm foundations and create your what if plan. Week 2, you protect what matters most, and you talk about the role of life insurance. Week 3, we create your legacy with wills, power of attorney, and trusts. And finally, week 4, the Black Box GPS, one system to rule them all, brings everything together, and you know you've got that peace of mind. And at the end, this is the black box, and there's a systemized roadmap that we take people through. So if this is something you're looking to do yourself, here's 5 tips I want to pass to you guys. So this is really high value, so make sure you get your notes out. The first one is use of trust to shield your properties from inheritance tax. So there's 2 things here. Firstly, all life insurance should be in trust. If not, that's criminal. The other thing you can do down the line is if you've paid your properties off down the line, put them into trust. And again, that puts them outside of inheritance tax. Again, all of this is subject to proper tax advice, but this is some of the things we've picked up along the way. The second thing is power of attorney is essential for property investors. You know, questions like who will manage my properties if I become incapacitated? Have I appointed someone reliable and trustworthy? Have I documented how my portfolio is run? Again, one of these things that we should be including into the black box if you haven't done so already. Life insurance is a business decision, not just a personal one. And some of the questions you guys should be asking is, how can life insurance protect my property investments and ensure my family or business partners aren't left with financial burdens? Do I have cover for my buy-to-let portfolio like we looked at in the protection pyramid? Another one, what other debt do I have that I need to cover? For example, JV finance. You know, if you guys are looking for JV finance, if you said to them, well, look, I actually, not only will I give you X%, but I will also have a life insurance policy to cover it if I should pass away. It's really, really strong and compelling stuff. Plan for a tax efficient exit strategy. Again, I know some people at the beginning, middle or end, but do think with the end in mind. A good example would be buying in personal name. You know, if you'd have known that limited companies are a better tax effective structure, would you have bought it in personal name or would you have bought it into limited company? You bought it in limited company. But there's still even further advanced techniques like a family investment company that you can use to start thinking about inheritance tax and passing those properties down to your children. And again, I can see some questions coming in. I will answer them when we come to the end. And the 5th one is your will should align with your property portfolio. So does my will clearly outline how my property should be distributed and who will be responsible for them? Have I considered any special provision or instructions for properties? Again, who will my properties go to? Do you want it just to be split 50-50? Those are some decisions you want to start thinking about. So just some points to bring it to an end. So I've given you some tips on how to do it yourself, but there are some dilemmas when you decide to try and do some of this stuff yourself. So the first is, with what we do, you've got 4 weeks. It's a 4-week program. At the end, you get your black box. It's 2 hours per week, structured approach to meetings and accountability, strict deadlines. You walk away with the black box, which is the next step checklist, comprehensive life insurance, black book, the what if plan, and obviously the wills, the power of attorney, and life insurance. You can do it yourself. We're happy to even support your point in the right direction. But the only thing I would say is 73% of clients we spoke to who decided not to take action, when we spoke to them a year later, they were no further along in the journey. So just be aware of that. And again, just some things to consider when you do it yourself. First is the DIY trap. People try and do this themselves and they talk to people separately and they're getting conflicting advice because they haven't got this one plan to manage it all. And that could take anything from 12 to 18 months. Multiple uncoordinated meetings, rising premiums. So again, life insurance goes up in price as the older you get because you're higher risk. Risk of incorrect setup was even worse. The amount of people we have to get to redo their wills because they've got the wrong advice. Family left vulnerable is the main thing. And again, that's why we've done the 4-week black box blueprint. And here's just a few of our clients, just to kind of bring this to an end. So Josh is one of our clients. He's a serial property investor, very successful. And this is what he had to say about us. He goes, what is success? For me, it used to be money, possessions, being able to buy whatever I wanted. Now it is 100% security for my family. It matters more than anything. Our property portfolio is geared around 45%. Our house is geared at 42%. I would take out more money and buy more, but I'd rather feel safe and secure. The black box was the final piece of the puzzle, a full in-depth review of all of our life insurance, private medical, critical illness, wills. I can now confirm I've done. And here's some of the key takeaways. If I die today, my family get wealthier. They inherit the portfolio with no mortgages. If my kids get sick, we can get private healthcare should we wish to. If anyone gets ill, we get at least some sort of payout for a few years. The peace of mind is priceless. Thank you, Akash, for making the process so easier. Now, do you think any of those snakes are going to touch him? No, he's got a very good protection fortress built around him. Another one, Tim Witt. Again, he's got a property portfolio building company, PBB. And this is what he had to say. So he goes, I'm very proud to say that my family now has security if I was to unfortunately kick the bucket. This is because the black box is in place thanks to Akash. I am proud of because what this does for the future and security of my family. The black box included a full review of my life insurance, ensured they're in trust and at the right amounts, updating our wills, getting lasting power of attorney documents in place, private medical, shareholder protection, which is a very important one, etc. It also includes a clear plan and checklist of what my family should do in the worst circumstances. If I was to die today, the below would be available for my family. Inherit the portfolio. Oh, Tim's speaking tonight in Amsterdam. Great. Nice. So if I was to die now, they would inherit the portfolio with no mortgages, all good debt and loans used in the property business fully paid off, receive funds from my JV partners via shareholder protection to buy out my shares, very important one, and private medical. The security and peace of mind is priceless. So again, there's many, many people doing this and getting it right. So just one video I'm going to bring towards the end. Can Asif, will you just let me know if you can hear this once I play it, please?
My wife and I are in our 30s, and dying isn't necessarily something you think about.
Because it's one of them things you just leave on the back burner all the time.
Because I find the whole process being quite confusing, quite overwhelming as well. If you were to look online, there's so many providers out there.
We tend to not prioritize it because you think it's something that's going to happen, probably not immediately, something that's going to happen maybe years and years down the line, you hope.
Sometimes life just gets in the way, right? I think sometimes you think of these things, just for whatever reason, things come up, and it just takes time to actually action them.
I wasn't sure if I need this one, and just got busy with the life and work.
A friend sadly passed away and left her young daughter without any will, and we just saw how important it was, and actually it brought death sadly a bit closer, but sort of reality struck.
We'd had our life insurance in place, but it was about 15 years ago that we actually done it. Since then, I'd had 3 kids, we bought another house, so we were really underinsured.
Something that's always in the back of our minds, you know, something that needs to be done, something that has to be in place. And it just was, the time had come and I thought, right, okay, we need to get the ball rolling.
We were actually moving home, and we were really looking at all of our finances and doing all the due diligence that you do when you do move home. And it kind of just highlighted to us that we've neglected putting this in place, and it's so important. So I think that started the conversation, and sometimes that's the first step.
Because of the awful things that my mum went through with her own mother. So when my grandmother actually passed away, there was no will in place. And I saw literally the hoops and the heartache and the pain that my mum went through.
Because when my first little one got born, then I thought I should have something in place just in case something happened to me.
I feel that, you know, should the worst happen, that my children and my wife will be taken care of. So it's essentially peace of mind.
It's one less stress for me because it was always on the back of my mind that I should be doing this, I should be getting all these bits in place, and it was nice to see a product and have it all in one place. So it's one person I was dealing with to get it all sorted for me.
Huge weight off our shoulders for myself and my partner, knowing that we've got this in place now. It's something that we have to worry about, knowing if the inevitable was to happen, our life would be covered.
I think it's peace of mind. That's the main thing. When you have this in place, and you initially to put it into place, then you don't have to worry about it. And now that you know there was a requirement for it, that we're protected.
At this moment, where we are, we feel that sort of comfort and that sort of peace of mind, if you like, you know.
So when I got my black box, done and I had all of my information together, I actually felt like I had a huge weight lifted off my shoulders.
I have peace in my mind that I have everything in place. If something happens to me, there's everything in place. They can open a black box.
If you're thinking about getting your will or lasting power of attorney or life insurance, or actually if you're not thinking about it, is that you should.
There's never going to be a perfect time to sort it out. You're always going to put it at the back of your mind to do, but best bit of advice is just get it done and you'll feel a lot better.
Do not delay. It's something that everyone needs to have in place. So why wait when you can get it done?
Don't waste time. And I think it's so difficult sometimes to prioritize these things because we don't feel that they're imminent or urgent.
It may be scary to you all, but it's a discussion that needs to be had whilst you're still able to make all of those decisions as well.
Don't wait for it. Just get a black box in place.
Okay, guys. So I hope that video was helpful from our clients. Again, just don't be careful of the DIY trap, which I'm not going to go into in more detail at this point. What the aim of the game, guys, is to have a defense mechanism. I can see Glenn Francis has been smashing. I can see other people have been smashing it. You've got things in place, but you want to make sure these snakes don't get you. What we've done is we've actually created a 4-week black box blueprint execution plan where you get everything done 4 weeks. We've told you about. However, it is application only, and the reason we've done it as application only is we only want to work with a few small amount of people who are keen on taking action. So that is everything. If you want to be considered for the black box blueprint execution program, here is our landing page on which you can book in a call with myself. We can spend 30 minutes going through where you are to see if you would be a good fit for us and answer any questions that you have. And Guillaume has obviously squeezed my arm and made sure we give you guys a discount. So there will be a £200 discount. Everything is on this link. Happy to discuss further. And remember, let's not get caught out by the snakes. Let's create a life after death that our family can be proud of. Thank you very much. That is it from me. Happy to open it up for questions and work through the points in the chat.
Perfect. So I'm going to just jump in and just say what an amazing offer that you've done there, and obviously what a great presentation as well. So I'm going to kick off the questions, and one of the questions I've got is, after listening to you, I've learned that I need to protect myself, and probably the reason why I haven't done it is because of a few reasons. Number one, I feel like I'm young, so I don't need to. Number two, I also also single at the moment, so I've got nobody to give my assets to. So my question to you would be, when do you think the best time is to be able to protect yourself?
Sorry, I'll put the code back up because it was asked in the chat. So Asif, I've worked with clients who were single, young. Because the thing is, the protection situations change. And just to kind of dissect into Dr. Bruce, we review these with clients annually because everything changes. So we've worked with a young gentleman while he was single, and the main concerns at that point were protecting his income, right? Because that's everything. Then he got married. He wanted to protect his family. He started a property portfolio, and then we started extending the protection around that, making sure the wills covered his family's property. So I would always start as early as you can. And what we do is we review annually. Nothing stays the same, but I would start as soon as you can.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, okay. That's probably the right thing for me. So I'm just going to have a look at the questions now and see if we've got one. I think his name is Ebony, and how to pronounce that. But he said, if we have our property in our own name, how can we rearrange things so that it's written in the trust? Would we have to pay capital gains tax to move it into a trust? And can you have a mortgage on a property in a trust?
Yeah, okay, so thank you, Vandy. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Thank you for that question. Firstly, this is not advice. So there's parts of it I can ask. So if you want to move your property, yes, you'd have to pay capital gains tax. This is a journey. At the beginning, you're building your portfolio, but my goal at the end is to reduce the debt, pay it off, At that point, when you move it into trust, my understanding from the tax advisors that I work with, Glenn might be able to help, is if you've got no debt on your property, you can move that into a trust without any implications. In terms of lending for properties that have debt on it that are in the trust, that can definitely become harder. So the name of the game in terms of moving properties into trust is when you're approaching the exit phase, and you want to start planning for how you're going to pass these on.
Brilliant. Okay, so next question we've got is from our fan favourite, is Dr. Bruce. How regularly should I update a black box?
Yeah, so Dr. Bruce, we recommend updating it once a year. If you do more than that, and I know things change, unless you've had a big change, you can update it. For example, if you get married, have kids, those are big changes. You make the change at that point because you want the will to reflect what people's situation is. But outside of that, we get you set up with a point in time after the 4-week program. And then after that, we set up an annual review with yourself, and then we review where you are. You might have bought some properties, you might have sold some properties, and we try and capture it at that point. With that in mind, that is the least onerous, but still helps make sure you guys are protected.
Brilliant. Okay, the next question is, if you have a few properties in your own name, can you move some to a trust and leave the others?
I think we've answered that one from Evande, right? Which is there would be a cost, in my understanding, if they're in your own name to move them into trust, especially if you've got debt. If you've got no debt, my understanding is there's no implication. So you're absolutely right about that. And then if you have a property in a trust with a mortgage, it is definitely harder to get lending. So you've pretty much, your gut feel on that is right, Evande. But for anyone who've got any more detailed questions, I'm happy to try and go through them in a bit more detail on that one-to-one when you book in a call.
Sorry, what was that?
I was saying, what's next? And look, Glenn is saying you can move your own property into a trust.
So I've got a question, and it's related to a trust as well. It's a bit of a technical one. So when you put a property into a trust, can you use that as collateral if it's unencumbered for a bridging loan?
So the problem with having properties in trust, right, is a trust is an entity that the banks can't easily get to. So when they need to repossess, when it's in personal name, they can repossess. When it's a limited company, they use personal guarantees, right? So they've got ways to get the money when they need it. When it's in trust, it all becomes just a bit more hard for the banks to touch. So it definitely does become more difficult, is all I can say.
Yeah, if they find out that you got it in a trust, then they won't give you any lending on it.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to take it outside the trust to do that.
Yeah, so generally, the way to think about the trust is start thinking about the trust when you want to pass on your properties, right? So that's the point where you're coming to the end of the journey where there is no debt on it. That's the point where you put trust. I don't see the purpose of having in trust when you've bought your first 2 buy-to-lets. Buying it in trust at that point, unless you're using a family investment company, which is a whole different topic, is probably not tax effective.
Okay, no, great answer. So the next question we've got is from Ivan, and it's the creation of all the legal things, i.e. trusts, LPAs, etc. Is that something done by your Black program, and are we directed to the relevant professionals?
So the Black Box program, when you walk away with your wills or updated wills, powers of attorney, trusts if needed, you walk away with everything. Now, I am a qualified life insurance advisor, but I've got expert people who will come into the program and deliver it. You could get a will writer, right? But they haven't done a legal qualification like the solicitors, right? And they can give you more bespoke advice, what type of trust. So I have a panel of trusted experts, and we will be delivering the program to you. And that makes sure you get expert advice from the experts and walk away with what you're needed, really. I think Noman said people just came in, but that's fine. I'll go through if there's any other questions. Does anyone want to put their hand up if you've got any other questions while you've got me? Any scenarios that you're currently in that you're unsure about that you want to ask?
Right, Ivan is currently typing, but I've always got a question, and my question is, how can the wonderful community members help you, and how can you help the wonderful community members? And I think the whole presentation is about that. So have you got any other final remarks regarding that?
No, again, our mission is to try and help as many people avoid the same problems as we've done. Main thing is, Glenn's done great. Glenn's got his process in place. If there's anyone else as family members or friends who isn't fully protected, please do put them in touch. We'll be more than happy to help them get their full protection in place. What happens after the trust expires in terms of IHT? We'll have to take that question offline. Trust normally lasts for 125 years. It's a bit more of a detailed answer. We can talk about OLA. And then the final one, is there a 7-year wait while the person is alive, or is this in effect? So there is something called a 7-year rule when it comes to inheritance tax planning. Again, I think there's questions that I can answer that will help everyone, and there's more bespoke questions that are more specific to people. That's probably best that you reach out and we can talk about it. So as part of the program, the main things that you get are the wills, power of attorney, life insurance, and the black box. However, for the advanced people, I've got a chartered tax advisor who helps specifically with inheritance tax if that's one of your problems. So I hope that helps. And again, please do scan that QR code. If you need any help, feel free to book in a call.
Okay, I think let's wrap it up there. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today's Deal Finder Corner. It was obviously a real pleasure to have you here, Akash. No doubt a lot of people are going to get in touch with us, and no doubt a lot of people got value from as well. I certainly did. And to be honest, I'm terrified of snakes even more now. So thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So our guest for next week, Deals Finder Corner, is Matt Baker. Matt is an award-winning developer, mentor, and best-selling author, a former professional musician. He's been in real estate since 2015 and is the UK's leading expert on HMOs and co-living. He has delivered hundreds of rooms nationwide and runs the HMO platform, the UK's top HMO training network, known for its award-winning education and client success. It's going to be a great one. All there's left to say is visit propertyfilter.co.uk, log on to your Property Filter account, check out the deal blueprint, define your goldmine area, engage with motivated sellers, assess properties in seconds, load your pipeline and make deals. Have an endless supply of deals, join the top 1% and become high achiever deal finders. So that's me, Asif from Property Filter. Looking forward to seeing you all next week. But in the meantime, go and grab those deals. Catch you soon. Thank you. And thanks again, Akash.
Thank you.